the break, Mutegi, you brought up one of the cases that Mr. Murgor was involved in, which had to do with the handling of the Delamere rather case, Tom Chumley. And I think the first incident, the shooting of someone on the farm.
Yes.
Ahead of some inquest or something, I remember.
The inquest was done and he said they have no evidence.
Actually, what he said...
Let me explain. Don't guess.
Yes.
There was an incident. Before it was investigated, there was a complaint regarding how the investigation process was being abused. The Attorney General directed a junior state counsel called Gumo in Nakuru not to charge anybody. The suspect should be held in custody, and he would finally give directions based on the evidence. The junior state counsel called Gumo defied those directions, charged Chomley. That didn't bother anybody. But when the file was finally brought to the Attorney General, Honorable Amos Wako, it was reviewed and there was no evidence to support a charge of murder. So the Attorney General directed that the case be terminated and an inquest be held. An inquest is not the end of a case. Inquest is now to really examine the facts and see whether or not anything criminal was done. So the Attorney General directed me to go and personally terminate the case. The reason why he asked me to do it is because the junior state counsel had already defied him. And so he asked me, just go and make sure my orders are obeyed. So I became the face of that termination. But the files at the Office of the Attorney General will show that it was the Attorney General who directed the termination. And to support this, until this day, a nolle prosequi just says it can be terminated, but it can be refiled. In other words, he could have been charged if there was evidence. So many years after that, until he died, the same suspect the other day, he was never charged, meaning there was never any evidence. It was an unfortunate case of mistaken identity coupled with self-defense. And if you know what that means, is if you shoot somebody by mistake, not knowing that, and not intending to not even knowing that they were there, or thinking they were robbers, you don't commit the offense of murder. Self-defense, there was an exchange of fire between the suspect and Chomley. So again, it justifies him taking steps to, to defend himself. The person who died, unfortunately, was on the Delamere property, not expected to be there, dressed in a manner and armed in such a way that the owner of the property believed he was a robber. So it was an unfortunate case.
Which brings me to your quest for the presidency, about the sanctity of life and your argument in that case. But before
you move forward.
No, just
before you move forward, so that we finish the sequence. I was not removed from office because of the Chomley case. I was removed from office because of the certain steps I'd taken in the 6.4 billion shilling cocaine case, where I was demanding a thorough investigation to bring all the people involved to book.
And which we will come to.
So, yeah.
In reference to the Tom Chomley case, you put up a very strong argument that one, he was a legal licensed gun holder. He was a law enforcement officer. Just a minute.
Right here or then?
Then.
Okay.
He was a law enforcement officer. I don't know under what agreement. And that he was acting in self-defense. And so that law enforcement officers who are licensed gun holders can kill. Otherwise, why would they be given guns?
You have got it wrong. I didn't put up such an argument at all. Not once did I say he was a law enforcement officer. What was said by the Attorney General, rather than me, because I only mouth the directions of the Attorney General, is that he was what we call an honorary game warden. An honorary game warden is, if Charles, you were lucky enough to have a ranch where you had wildlife, you are conferred with a status called an honorary game warden, so that you are given the responsibility of protecting
the game.
The fellow who was also a game warden.
Who?
Olesisina, Samson Olesisina.
Now, the person who is killed, or who ends up unfortunately passing on, is a game warden from KWS, dressed down, disguising himself as a meat trader from Isli. So how does he look? He's not in uniform. The vehicle he comes in is an ordinary vehicle with ordinary civilian plates. And the information that goes to the Chomli homestead is that there are robbers in the slaughterhouse. So the owner of the ranch comes down to rescue his workers who have been rounded up and locked in a room. And he says, as he comes round the slaughterhouse, what does he see? He sees a person in a crouched position pointing a firearm at him. He says in his statement, this is Chomli, the person fired first and I then fired. Those who heard the gunshots support that. So it's too much detail, but what I'm trying to say is the Attorney General's final decision is supported by the evidence.
So we're running out of time. You both had questions about this Chomli case and the implications for a Murgor presidency. What were your concerns?
That the general feeling is that maybe they were compromised because
that he was compromised.
The Attorney General.
The general feeling is that he didn't care about the life that was lost. And I will tie that with the case of the late Dr. Odhiambo Mbai, where you say the widow should provide more evidence if she has any. As a president, would you tell people to provide evidence against corruption?
Let's start with let's finish with
no, we finished with Chomli.
What was the question?
Let's move into
mine is the case of sanctity of life,
sanctity of
and
life.
the responsibility of the protection of life.
Charles, are you aware
or
that
the status of the Chomli?
Look, we're running out of time.
Which one should I answer?
The widow. We spent quite a bit of time on the Delamere case.
Provide more evidence. I don't recall in which connection, but when you read a file as a director of public prosecutions, you see gaps. And if it was Charles testifying and does not respond to a certain aspect, the direction an Attorney General or a DPP gives is that Charles should give more evidence. When I say that is, for example, if you say that I believe Mutegi Njau was involved in the incident, it always provokes a question. Can Charles explain what he means about Mutegi Njau being involved? So it's as simple as that. It's about evidence. You don't charge, you don't prosecute people because the public outcry is that you must. You must look at the evidence because you have to live with that prosecution.
So what's different from fighting corruption in that case? As a president, wouldn't you be telling people bring evidence?
Now, the interesting thing about the corruption and being the head of state is it's not about bring evidence. It's about whether or not you have the integrity, perceived or otherwise, to serve in a government. So that if there is a huge clamor about Charles as my minister of X and Y, who is amassing a lot of wealth and everybody says he's corrupt.
I would love to.
Now, I will tell you why you will not serve in my government. Because if you can't explain your wealth, then you have to leave my government. You serve at the pleasure of the president. The president has a choice. As to whether or not I prosecute you, it will depend on the evidence. So there are two levels a president can deal with corruption. You can live in the public interest, but if there is sufficient evidence, you will be prosecuted. On my watch, you will not serve if you have unexplained wealth. You will not serve and you will be prosecuted if there is evidence against you.
Okay, very quickly, still on the issue of wealth, because our viewer, Kipchumba in Iten, says, Philip Murgor is very much a child of privilege. Ditto his wife. He is the child of a colonial administrator who later became an MP. For him, therefore, to call the likes of Uhuru, Raila and Mudavadi privileged is a classic case of the pot calling the kettle black. Ask him to demonstrate his track record as far as Kenya's democratization process is concerned and whether he is not wealthy because of working for Moi.
His name was?
Let's just call him Kip.
Kip. I thank Kip for the question. I do not say that I am not. I do not say that I have not got a little bit of wealth, but I should say this to him: every presidential candidate should declare their wealth at the point of campaigning for that office, and should declare their wealth on the way out. So there is no exponential increase in wealth. And I didn't describe Uhuru and Raila as children of privilege. I simply said it should not be the reason why they get elected. I said they must demonstrate leadership as opposed to simply coming from a family. So it shouldn't be a question of a dynasty. It shouldn't be a question of entitlement. It should be more about leadership. And when I said they do not offer anything new, it wasn't because they were children of privilege, but because they have to show that they are able to change.
You mentioned earlier you're being removed from office.
And I should tell Kip that I was born in Iten, and I don't have any property in Iten. So
and you're driving agricultural machines by age 13. I
was driving agricultural machines by 18. Shows I'm a hands-on person. I don't sit waiting for the silver spoon to go into my mouth. That is work. By the way, workers drive agricultural machines, not owners.
You talked earlier about your involvement in the 6-point-something billion drug.
6.4 billion shilling cocaine case.
Yeah, this case is still going on.
No, it was concluded.
No. There is the drug issue is still in this country. The people involved, and we have seen it today in today's paper. Are you happy the way the matter is being handled currently? According to what appeared in the press today.
It's a huge relief for the country that the Akashas have finally been extradited. I'm now talking as a layperson. But as a lawyer, as a former DPP, I am very, very concerned that there might be a gap in the manner in which the law was applied. I say this because as a young state counsel, during the time of Ambassador Hempston, I was assigned the task, I think it was in 1989. I was assigned the task of having some Nigerian extradited to face trial in some place in the US. And we went through a long process of receiving the extradition request and finalizing the extradition proceedings to the point when the magistrate ordered the extradition of the gentleman. There was a quick appeal that was handled very, very quickly. It was dismissed before the Nigerian gentleman was put on a plane. I read in the paper today that these proceedings were still outstanding, and the problem with that is that it reflects on the legal and justice process in our country.
It's a violation of sovereignty.
We appear to have acquiesced in it, so we are not complaining. But it means that we have bent the law. We have gone through an extrajudicial process, which comes back to bite you at some point.
Is it a rendition?
Yeah, it begins to look like a rendition, and I can tell you when I was, just to give Charles some assurance that I'm firm, when I was DPP, there were several terrorism attacks, and there was discussions about simply putting the suspects on a plane to some other country. And I said, not outside the legal process.
Are you a quitter? In reference to the Kiraitu Murungi-led, midwife to judicial reforms, when you resigned because the institutional challenges were enormous.
I didn't resign. I was thrown out of office.
You were?
On the 25th of May 2005, I was sacked while I was on, just before I went on to NTV. And you all spent the next 2 weeks discussing how good and bad my sacking was. I never resigned.
Actually,
but I should tell you that a month earlier, I offered my resignation to Mwai Kibaki and said, if you will not support the fight against impunity and corruption and all these forces fighting me, including Kiraitu Murungi, I am quite happy to quit. And the president said, absolutely not.
The Telegraph reported in its opening paragraph, in reference to your being sacked, that Kenyans cheered. Are you disturbed by such a comment? Kenyans cheered when you were sacked.
I don't know which telegraph you're talking about. The Bush Telegraph or the newspaper Telegraph?
The newspaper Telegraph.
No. The Bush Telegraph did celebrate. The Lords of Impunity went into song and dance. And I should tell you something about how it all happened. A lady called Catherine Gisheru in The Nation, together with a guy called Muiruri, sat down with the Director of Public Prosecutions and orchestrated something in The Nation media, which then...
they're not here to defend themselves, huh?
He's asked me who cheered.
No.
He asked me who cheered. So what I was saying is the rest of the country didn't cheer. But a small section who deliberately said, this guy has gone too much, it's gone too far, we don't know who's next, we better get rid of him before one or two ministers involved in two high-level corruption cases was arrested.
Were those drugs destroyed? In your knowledge?
Thank you for asking the question, Uduak. I know you want to bring this to an end, but while I was in office, there was great reluctance to destroy the drugs. A certain police officer tried to sneak in a letter into my office to get authority to dispose of the cocaine without coming to court. I intercepted it, I stopped it. 1.5 years later, 1 year, 3 months, there was a big bonfire. We were told the drugs were destroyed. I wasn't there.
And you've answered this question the last time that you were on, Cheche, but you know, for the benefit of our viewers who may not remember. But time is running out, and I do have to ask you this question, because you alluded to it earlier, that your candidacy is disrupting voting patterns in certain communities. And given the pattern of voting in Kenya, right, we know that it's ethnic-based, you say that you want to fight against tribalism. What would you say your base is? Who is voting for Philip Murgor?
I'd answered the first question about the billions. I don't have the billions. I will be expecting support. The next question I'm always asked is the base. So it's the two Bs. And when I ask people to elaborate what they mean by a base, they say the tribe. And I say, so are you saying that, you know, I must have a tribe behind me? They say yes, that's the nature of Kenyan politics. The tribal base phenomenon is what took us to war in 2008. It is the phenomenon that will finally destroy this country. I am presenting myself as a candidate for Kenya. My base is Kenya. I may come from Kalenjin country, as the boy from Iten mentioned, but I am not presenting myself as a candidate from a community. I am presenting myself as a candidate for Kenya.
Doesn't the question then become that if your own community doesn't vote for you, why should the rest of Kenya vote for you?
I differ with you. I have had tremendous words of encouragement from my community, particularly people who are tired of defending the participation of the Deputy President in this government. Now, we were talking before the show started about the apathy and the voter turnout and those who don't want to vote. My own analysis of that situation, and it's supported by some data, is that the 20% or so who are registered and who don't wish to vote will not vote because they say the choices do not appeal to them. They are tribal, they do not represent change. I am reaching out to that 20%. I am saying there is a disruptive, I'm using your word, disruptive candidate here who will change the status quo in politics, who will go forward saying we are one Kenya, and it's not about a group of tribes ganging up against the other two. I've said this on television before. For those who care to look at the situation on the ground, it's probably the poorest people in this country today, in the countryside, are probably, many of them are Kikuyus and Kalenjins. So when people on one side start saying it is these tribes ganging up against two tribes, I say you're using tribalism to kill the problem, which means as soon as you win, the 50% or so that come out simply start the whole process of undermining you again. It is time to stop. It is time for both sides, meaning the Jubilee coalition and the other group, however they finally fashion themselves, to identify, and this comes to the first question, identify that candidate that will unify the country again, to allow them to step down from this idea that they must win whatever the cost and whatever the consequences. So the issue of my base, I'm proud to say my base is Kenya.
And so our final question to you, because we've heard talk that this might be a trial run. Are you telling us therefore that come August, your name, Philip Murgor, will be on the ballot against presidency, that you're not going to, drop out in favor of some other thing, that this is not just some scheme to get yourself noticed?
You know, now that I'm a politician, I have heard these sayings, there are no permanent enemies, there are no permanent friends, there are no just common interests and so on. All I can say is this, within the political space, as far as common interest is concerned, I don't rule out developments about my candidacy when it comes to common interests. However, at this point in time, I would like to assure the country that I will be on the ballot. Trial run, I assume you refer to the idea of 2022. If I was interested in 2022, I would wait a little longer and announce it in the next government. But my view is that as matters stand, there will be no 2022 elections at the rate we are going. If this country hasn't imploded or fallen into civil war or become a total dictatorship, because you must remember that we now have the Chinese Communist Party as consultants for one side, teaching them on how to rule for 100 years. This is the election that will determine the future of this country. This is the election where we must have change. Change where we turn away from what I see as a very dark time for this country. The signs are all there. The only problem with our Kenyans is that while we identify the problem, when it comes to the solution, we all say, but there's nobody who can do it. And of course, when somebody step forward, like I have done, a lot of energy is spent in discussions why I'll not succeed or why I shouldn't have tried, rather than saying, for the effort, for the courage, this idea deserves some support. But I think, given choices, Kenyans always make the right choices. They made the right choice in 2002 with the right opportunity and facilitation, which is, of course, opportunities like I have had today on Cheche. The country will begin to know me. On time, Mr. Kip from Iten said 7 months. I say to him, I say to all Kenyans, and which camera should I face? That one. I say to all of you as Kenyans, you only need a half an hour from any candidate to decide who you will vote for. You don't need 7 months of aerial bombardment by helicopters, by loudspeakers telling you where you must vote. And to those who have still got an opportunity to register as voters, I appeal to all of you, please register to vote, because should you decide you're voting for change, for a better Kenya, you will not be able to vote unless you have registered. Thank you. God bless Kenya.
We'll have to end the conversation there because that's all we have time for. And so our thanks to our guest this morning, presidential aspirant Philip Murgor. All the best from us and to the other aspirants. Our thanks also to our panelists, Tekin Jao and Charles Odhiambo. Thank you for watching and engaging with us. My name is Udrak Amimo. Have a great week.